Hi, everybody. This is Wendy O'Connor here. I'm a registered physiotherapist and an ergonomic consultant with Injury Prevention Plus, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join in this webinar today for this look into ergonomics and working from home. This last few weeks, we're all into something new with this COVID-19, and I'm sure some of you are trying to figure out how to make your home offices work. So I'm hoping this is timely. And I guess on that same note, I'm into something new too, because this is my first webinar. So bear with me and hopefully everything will go well. We've got some expertise in the background. Keith Gallup is helping us out with the running of this, and he's also going to help us out with a few survey questions so I can get a bit of feel for the audience and what kind of issues you're having at home. So when you see those survey questions come up, if you can quickly put in the answer, Keith will be sending you something, and then I can get back to you with what the results look like. Okay, so I'm going to get started here. So this is what the first question is going to be, and you're going to get a link in a minute that you can tell us what your experience is at the moment. So you should have a survey now in front of you, and if you can click in how you're feeling at the moment at home. This is something we want to address in the session. And I guess while I'm just waiting, I'm going to say that we've got a great internet connection right now, but I know the demand has been high on the system. So if something happens, we may be able to get back on, but if not, you'll be getting an email from us, and we'll try to reschedule at a time that can work for most people. So keep your fingers crossed. Okay, so thanks for your feedback. It looks like 42% of the people joining us today are having issues with their neck and shoulders, about 12% forearm, hand, 19% lower back, and 21% all of the above. 6% are feeling great. So we're happy for the 6% of you, and the rest of you, I'm going to get you to hang in there and wait, because in the next little bit we're going to move forward with some answers to some of those things that'll help you. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk about. Yeah, I'm having some difficulty just getting to the next slide there. Let me see if this works. Yep, we're good to go. Okay, so today the focus is obviously ergonomics and your home office. Some of these things you may be able to apply to your office at some point in time. Hopefully we'll get back to the main office in a number of weeks or a month. We're going to talk about correlates between pain and working from home. We're going to talk about key non-neutral postures that can cause difficulty and can cause pain. We're going to talk about how to optimize your workspace at home, whether you have a dedicated space or not, and exercises that really can make a difference and how often you should do them. So that's the focus today. And so to start with, what is ergonomics? I know everybody's heard the term, but really what we're looking at is the relationship between the work you do, the worker themselves, so your stature and your body, and then the tools you have to work with. So in this case, that's your home office. So the goal of ergonomics is to design work environments so they improve the safety, health, comfort, and performance of the worker, with the idea of minimizing any risk for injury. So I guess the real question is, we often talk about ergonomics in the workplace, but now our workplace is your home. So we're going to try to focus on that today and see if we can come up with some ideas that'll help you. So I guess to start with, there are a couple of key physical reasons why we experience pain when we're working. Non-neutral postures have been clearly identified in the literature as a reason for increased pain or discomfort. And these postures, the reason for that is that they increase the load on the joint or the muscle or the ligament tissue, and over time that tissue reduces, the tolerance to that load reduces, and so we start to experience some discomfort initially, and then eventually that can become pain. The other key thing I think that's really important is sustaining postures. So when we're working at a workspace, we tend to sit there for a period of time. So when we sit for too long in one posture, the muscles that are contracting to hold us there produce a byproduct called lactic acid. If you're a runner or a person who exercises, you might be familiar with that feeling of fatigue in a muscle that as you stretch and move around, it kind of goes away. And that's exactly what happens here, is that, you know, if we're sitting, our neck muscles perhaps might be contracting continuously, so the lactic acid builds up in the tissue, and unless we move and allow the blood to flow through, then that lactic acid can irritate the muscle, and then we can get sore. Some postures create more work for the muscle than others, and that's where we talked about non-neutral or neutral or optimal postures. As we go along, you're going to see that some postures increase the load that we have to do. So I don't know if you'll be able to do this very well on a webinar, but I'm going to try. If you have your right arm by your side and your elbows by your waist, and you put your right hand facing up towards the ceiling with your elbow bent, in that position, you could hold your arm like that for quite a long time and your shoulder wouldn't get sore. If you take that arm and move it away to the side, so your arm is now at 90 degrees from your body, if you try to hold it out there for a few minutes, you'll start to feel the fatigue in the muscle quite quickly. So you can identify that some postures make you tired more quickly than others. And that's the focus of some of these neutral postures. So as we go along, you're going to see that a little bit more. Okay, so what is a musculoskeletal disorder? It's a long term, but basically the pain that we get that's connected to muscle or joint or nerves is often called a musculoskeletal disorder, or an MSD. And this pain is really often related to an inflammation that results from overuse of a particular part of the body. So people tend to wait and just think, well, it'll go away, or I don't really know what's causing that, so maybe they don't do anything about it. And that's pretty normal. I think most people do that. But understanding the cause of the pain, which is what we're hoping to do today, is to identify some of that and take that information and make a change, can help to prevent some of the pain and discomfort we're feeling. So on this slide, you'll see there's a picture of somebody holding their wrist in hand, somebody holding their back, and somebody with their neck looking really sore. And those are really typical problems that we see in the office environment. And in fact, one quite good study that went over a 3-year period with the same computer users, they had people record their information in a daily diary. Up to a third, it was approximately a third of those people reported neck and back pain. Now today, about 42% of you said that your neck was bothering your neck or shoulders. So you're definitely in the same ballpark where you're seeing that a considerable number of people really do have neck and shoulder pain when they're at the computer. Okay, so this shows you a little bit about what's happening with your neck when you're at the computer. So if you look at the center picture, you'll see some muscles, and that's a picture from the back of the head and the shoulder blades. And those are support muscles that are affected when we change our neck posture and when we work at the computer. And so the picture in the middle is the picture of what we call the trapezius muscle. It has 3 portions you can see with the yellow lines. And then there's a splenius capitis. You don't need to remember the names, and it is a really great picture. And I recognize that only a physio can get excited about the picture of muscles, but it is a really great picture because it shows you how those muscles are working to pull together the back of the neck, the shoulder blades, and the spine. And they're pretty important. So on the left-hand side, you can see a picture of somebody standing with their ear over their shoulder, and their neck is aligned in a vertical position. So that's what we call neutral posture, or a good head posture. And then you see the head forward position, and you might think you don't pull your head forward like that very often, but surprisingly, we do when we sit down to the computer, move our arms and our head forward in order to interact with the monitor and the keyboard and the mouse. So when you leave this presentation, I want you to go back to your workstation, and I want you to watch how long you stay upright in a nice neutral posture before you kind of slump into the computer. And I'm willing to put some money that you're going to be leaning forward a little bit. Now on the right-hand side, you see a picture where there's some little red dots and a big X, and those are trigger points within that trapezius and the splenius capitis muscle where we tend to get sore. And if you take your hand now and on one side of your neck, press on some of those spots, I think what you'll find is that there are some tender spots in there that can become worse with those head forward postures. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea, an insight into what's going on inside. Okay, so how does the spine work, and what about the anatomy? Does that matter? And I think it's really important because one of the things that we know is that people do end up with pain in their neck and in their low back. So on this slide, I've got just moving this cursor here a little bit, but you'll see that here's the bones of the spine as they make up your spine. And in between each of the bones is this thing we call the disc. And that disc has a jelly-like center and a fibrous outer shell that's firmly attached, but it can get stretched or bulged when we move our spine. It's meant to do that because it's a joint in our spine. But if we use a position where the wall is bulged quite often, if you look just down here at the bottom, you'll see it's fairly stable centrally, but as we get a weaker wall or a stretch on the wall, sometimes that jelly-like part can move towards the outside and we get a bulge or a herniation of that center portion. And that can interfere with the nerve information that comes from our spine. Here's the spinal cord and the nerve root as it exits. And so that disc can press on that or press in the tissue around it that can irritate it. And then we do get pain. So I want to show you this next slide that talks a little bit about the posture and why we want certain postures to minimize any bulging that happens. So on the left-hand side of this screen, you'll see that what our natural position of the spine would look like as we stand. You know, these little bumps are the ones you can feel on your back. Now, we often think, I mean, at least I get the impression that people believe that a lot of the back pain we get is because we lifted in a bad way. We bent over at the waist and we lifted our child, or we lifted a box, or pushed or pulled something out of our trunk. So in that positioning, you can see that the spine is fully flexed, and so the disc is bulging. So that's a high risk posture for sure. But what we see is that oftentimes some of the problems we get are really more from unsupported sitting. So leaning forward, away from the chair back, or away from the couch, sitting into a soft, sloppy couch. And physios don't like sloppy couches. I'm not the only one. It's a group effort. We all like you to sit on something nice and firm. So if you are going to sit on a couch for short periods for a break, we want you to keep those periods short, tuck a pillow behind your back to try to maintain what we call a lumbar lordosis, or that curve in your low back. Okay, so the next slide is just talking a little bit about other things you can do to minimize back pain. The one thing is to identify early that your back is getting uncomfortable, get up and move. And that's a really big deal. The second thing is really supporting your back well when you work. You may find that you have an adjustable chair at home and you can adjust the lumbar support to fit right in there. That's great. Important to sit well back in the chair and fill in that space with a cushion, a rolled up towel, some way to maintain the curve so the disc doesn't bulge or become kind of sloppy as you sit. Extending your spine to reduce any bulging that you might have experienced with sitting, because we do know the disc pressure is higher when we sit, so getting up and moving can make a big difference to that. And I know a lot of you are at home with your kids. It isn't a question I put on the survey, but if you are, and I'm suspecting you're going to be lifting more, you're going to be picking up more toys off the floor, maybe you'll get the kids to do it. That'd be great. And so when you're lifting, you want to do what we call a volleyball bump position, but you've dropped your hips and knees a little, keep the curve in your spine and lift that way if you can. Getting down to play with your kids, get them to climb up on a step or the couch so you can pick them from a higher height. So just some key things you can do if you're starting to feel some discomfort or to minimize the pain. Okay, carpal tunnel. People have heard of this term, I know. And carpal tunnel is really a problem with the palm side of your hand, as you can see on this image right here. If you have pain on the back of your hand, or you have pain in or pins and needles in your little finger, it is not carpal tunnel. Carpal tunnel occurs when we have compression of the nerve right here as it comes through a little space in the wrist. Now, that nerve can get compressed a little bit and can get irritated. So you might get pins and needles into your thumb, your first two fingers. You might get soreness around the wrist. You might feel like you're dropping things or it feels weak. Carpal tunnel is not necessarily associated with computer work, but if you sit at a table where it's too high and you're getting pressure on the wrist, that definitely can irritate the tissue in that area. So wanting to watch that neutral posture, which we will show you some good examples of as we move along. Okay, now this last sort of anatomy slide, if you want to call them that, but information about the injuries is about your elbow. This is something that can happen similarly in the shoulder, where you might get an irritation of the tendon, which they call a tendinitis. And in the elbow or the forearm, it's often associated with gripping. So holding the mouse, working with the wrist in extended position, as you can kind of see right here, that extended wrist position, hanging onto the mouse for prolonged periods of time. So that tendon can get tired and you can get an irritation where it attaches to the bone there. Okay, so off from the anatomy and on to just what do we consider non-neutral postures and what's the impact. They've done some great studies to look at what kind of positioning has been associated with pain when you're working at a computer. So we know that for neck and shoulder pain, if the monitor is too high or too low, if the monitor is too far away, or the font is too small, the keyboard is too high or too low, the lack of forearm support when you're working, so you have to hold your shoulders up, or reaching for the keyboard or the mouse when you're not close to it. So those are key positioning things. We're going to show you some nice examples in a couple of minutes. And then with regards to the low back, we know that pain can be increased there if we do not maintain that lumbar curve when we're lifting or lifting something that's very heavy, and that if our back is unsupported or flattened out when we're sitting. So here's an example of the monitor being too high or too low. So on this left picture, I'm going to talk about two kinds of monitor heights, and you'll see in a graphic in a few minutes some more details. This person on the left has something called progressive lenses, which means the top of her lens is for distance, so anything greater than 36 inches, and the bottom is for reading up close. So what happens if the monitor is too high is people have to lift their chin in order to be able to see what's on the screen, and that causes neck pain quite quickly, and it can irritate the nerve at the neck so as it goes down the arm and cause arm pain. On this side, you see somebody again with progressive lenses, but in this case, they're reading down to the lens and they're able to maintain a fairly neutral posture with their neck right here as they're reading the screen. That might be a little bit low for optimal positioning, but it is still better than lifting the chin, as you see on the left. Now, this bottom picture just shows somebody without any lenses at all, or somebody who might wear single lenses would want the screen much higher. So the top of their screen would be approximately eye level. And in this case, she ends up looking down because the screen is much too low. Okay, so if the screen is too far away or the font is too small, then people end up leaning forward in order to get a clear view and not to experience too much eye fatigue. So in this case, what you're seeing, and this is often something that people don't recognize because they may not wear glasses, they may not realize that there are some restrictions or some limitations to their vision. So what you need to watch when you sit down at your computer after this session is, what position are you in? Can you see the screen clearly? Do you tend to lean forward in order to see, or are you experiencing eye fatigue at the end of the day? So all of those things are important because they tend to mean that the positioning of the screen is not optimal. Now you'll notice when people lean forward that their neck is bent and their upper back is rounded, and that's again a position where people can experience pain and discomfort. So we really want a neutral posture when you're working at the computer. So we talked about pressure on the wrist and carpal tunnel. This picture on the left where you can see this keyboard surface is higher than the elbow. And so what's happening when she relaxes her arm to work is that she gets pressure underneath the wrist and hand. So you want to avoid that. You really want the working surface to be in line with just under your elbow height. Now on the right-hand side, you'll see that this person is trying to work in standing. Oh, excuse me, I've gone ahead. I'm just going to pop back here to the previous slide. Whoops. Here we go. Oh, that's not going to work. Just a second here. I'm having some difficulty just kind of getting back to the previous slide. Okay, I don't really want to go ahead without finishing those up, so I'm gonna, okay.
I'm
just gonna exit.
In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see a back arrow of the.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. I couldn't see that on my screen. Thank you. Oh, Keith saved the day. Thank you. All right, so we're just had a little preview there of the. Okay. All right, and so you see on the right-hand side, she's leaning forward because she's trying to get some support when she works because the surface is too low. And on the bottom image, you'll see the table's much too high. And sometimes when you first sit down, you don't notice it, but as you're sitting there, he definitely would start to get some pain in his upper back and shoulders. So that's reaching for the keyboard or the mouse. And here, the key problem is not getting close enough to the tools you're using. So really want to sit back in the chair, hips in the chair, shoulders back against the seat, pull that in as close as you can so that when you're working on the keyboard, you're not having to bring your arms forward away from your body. Same thing with the mouse. Sometimes it kind of slides away from us, or if we've got paper around us, it gets off to the side. And that can definitely give you some pain into that shoulder area right here or into the wrist and hand. Okay. So unsupported sittings. Often people have a question, could I use a yoga ball or could I use an exercise ball to sit on? For short periods, it could be used, but just to remember that the ball needs to be inflated such that your hips are 3 or 4 inches above the level of your knees in order to allow you to avoid what you're seeing here, which is that rounded low back position and the disc bulging. So we really want the spine to be able to maintain that nice positioning. Here, this person's positioning is not too bad, but they're not getting any support. So over the period of a day, could get quite tired. Sometimes when the surface is too high, which is what you're seeing here, then people sit on the front of their chair because it allows them to feel a little higher. And so she may be trying to do that. So we really want to make sure that we're sitting well back in the seating and that we're getting that lumbar support and we're not sort of getting a bulge happening there in the low back. Okay, time for another survey question so I can find out what you guys are doing. So you can see the question. Keith is going to send that out to you. So we're trying to get an idea of how people are set up at home. How many people have had to just dive in and throw the laptop anywhere? Okay, pretty even split. 49% have a desk that's dedicated to the work at home, and about 51% are making do with whatever they've got. Well, we've got some answers for both of you on that for sure. So I'm just going to move along to the next slide. And I think we're just sort of stuck there a little bit. I don't know, Keith, if you can.
I think, Wendy, if you just click on the slide, you should be back in business.
Oh, I see there. I was clicking on the enter. Okay, good. So there's the survey question. Thanks again, Keith. What would we do without you? Okay, you can tell it's my first time. Thanks for your patience. So this slide just talks about how ergonomic is your home office. Okay, so the picture on the right's a real picture, and of somebody who's been taking a break from their space to kind of just change their posture. And any posture is okay for short periods of time for sure. But we definitely wouldn't suggest laying on the floor all day. On the left upper picture, you can see the person is sitting in a wooden chair. Many of you might be sitting in a chair that isn't adjustable. And oftentimes what happens is that chair is too low for the desk surface that you might have. So you can see here on the left, which I think is important, that the chair there's some space between, oops, sorry, I can't get the mouse pointing to there, but you can see some space between the back of the chair and her back. And so really we want your back to be supported as you're working. So maybe getting a cushion in underneath, something to raise her up. So we're going to look at some of those options. And then the picture at the bottom, there's 4 sets of hands on that keyboard. And that might be happening with you at home if you've got young children. But I'm thinking productivity wise, you might be better off with just 2 sets, just 2 hands. Okay, so here you're seeing, here's the goal, neutral posture. So what does that look like and what does that mean? If you're wearing single lenses or no glasses at all, then we would have the distance to the screen set at less than 30 inches for the most part. It can be a little more, it could be down to at least 22 inches if that's better for you. But what's important is it's in a position where you can read clearly, you don't get eye fatigue, and you're able to keep your posture. Top of the screen should be approximately eye level or slightly below, and your keyboard should be at just under your elbow height so that your wrist and hand is in line and your shoulders are relaxed. When you're sitting, we like to see the knees and hips in line with each other, and there should be a little bit of space just underneath, just behind the calf, so you're not getting pressure from the seat behind the calf. And in standing, all of the measurements are the same. Just to say that we often don't recommend people stand for more than 30 to 45 minutes because you can get some blood pooling, you can get some fatigue in your back or your knees. It's good to mix it up if you have that opportunity. On the right-hand side, you'll see the monitor positioning is shown to be lower. So if you're, again, we talked briefly about progressive lens users, but if you're reading with the bottom portion of your screen, it's quite important that the screen is within arm's length, which is typically around 24 inches for a lot of people. But you can play with that a little bit, and that the top of the screen is 5 or 6 inches below eye level. We often say that a laptop isn't all that ergonomic because you can either have the keyboard at the right height or the monitor at the right height. But for progressive lens users, so one thing that gets better as you get older is the laptop is actually pretty good for both. All right, I'm just gonna go to the next slide. This gives you a bit of just a visual of what you might look like when you're on the laptop. Just check that out when you go back to your workspace today and see how well you feel you're positioned. On the right-hand side, you can see maintaining the curve of the neck, and you can see that the screen is up higher on a laptop riser. So the rule of thumb, if you're using the laptop for greater than 2 hours at a time, and I'm pretty sure whoever your employer is hoping that you're working for more than 2 hours per day, and I'm sure you are, that you should consider an external laptop riser or a box to raise up the laptop so the screen is the right height for you, and using an external keyboard and a mouse. If you are experiencing some wrist and hand problems with the keyboard or reaching for the mouse, what we find is that a smaller keyboard often works well, and a flat one, so that it's not raised up too much. And the smaller compact keyboards are around 12 to 15 inches wide. So 12 inches allows the mouse to be very close, and it really reduces the reach that you'll experience with having the mouse by the keyboard. Okay, so here's an example of somebody adapting their workspace at home. So what I want to show you here is a progression kind of some changes you might be able to make. So on the far left, you'll see that when she sat down to work, she's reaching a bit because she's not able to get in close because of the structure under the desk. She's sitting in a chair that's a little high for her, so that if you look underneath her thighs, there's a yellow circle there. And what you'll see is that she's getting pressure on the back of her thighs, and over time that can cause discomfort. Her knees are lower than her hips. When she's sitting, her upper back and her neck are bent forward, and it often even affects the feeling of support for your low back. You can get some flexion happening there as well. So really leaning forward to read, and she's looking down. So the left is not a great positioning, so we want to make some changes to that. So what do? We're going to move into the center picture, and what you'll see here is that she still has some pressure point underneath her thighs because her knees are still lower than her hips, but she's added a cushion behind her back, and she's raised the laptop up on a riser. So now the screen is higher. It is still lower than her eye level, but it's improved. And you can see that she's sitting maybe a little bit low still because her elbow is below the desk height, and so she's getting some pressure at the wrist. And then on the last image on the right, you'll see that she's taken a box and used the riser and the box, and sometimes that is required if you've got a longer torso. So she's got the screen at a better height. She's now put something under her feet to take away the pressure point. So it could be a footrest, could be a box, could be a stack of books, can be anything that's going to give you the height to get the pressure off under your thigh. She's got a cushion under her seat to raise her a little bit so that her alignment of her arm and her relaxed position of her shoulders is better. And she's getting a little bit better support for the low back. So it's pretty good. The one fault is she still cannot get close in under the desk, so she's still got to reach a little bit with her arms. So just keeping in mind, there's some small, easy ways to kind of make some of those changes, and always sort of evaluating, maybe get somebody to look at you from the side to say, how am I sitting? Is my ear over my shoulder, over my hip? Is my curve maintained? Is the monitor look like it's at eye level or just a bit below? So those are ways for you to kind of try some changes and get some feedback. Maybe have somebody take a picture of you from the side, and you can say, oh, wow, okay, that, because sometimes how you feel is not necessarily what it looks like. Sometimes people feel that the monitor's too high, but in actual fact, it is at eye level. So just a quick tip. Here's another example of somebody, adapting really just a standard height desk with a wooden chair again, but with a cushion behind. In this case, they put an external monitor as opposed to using the laptop. And if you find the laptop screen small, that is another alternative, is to have a monitor hooked up and just use your laptop as the CPU, or in this case, he's put it in front for a quick reference, maybe check his email, whatever, something like that. So in this case, lining yourself up in that neutral positioning, as we've said, where your elbows are about the height of the desk and you can sit in a nice neutral posture without leaning forward. So this setup's pretty good for a home office. He's looking like he's pretty well aligned, as you can see. Okay, handheld devices. They're very convenient. We just use them more and more every year that they exist, and there's more and more tools to go with them. So we're not going to be stopping anytime soon, and probably we're doing it more because we're at home. So what do we look at when we're using handheld devices? Really being careful that when we're using our neck posture, that we're not sitting over an iPad or with our phone on the couch with our neck bent down. Really trying to lift the screen to you and keep your posture, or put it on a stand so you can see it a little bit better. Looking at your hand, your grip, and the size of the device you use. There are some pretty big handheld devices now in terms of, you know, the newer iPhones are quite large, and some of the Androids. You may find that's hard to hold and type with one thumb, or to, excuse me, or to type with even with two thumbs sometimes reduces the stretch of your thumb. So think about the size of the device you're using and how you're holding it. A lot of people haven't tried the type and swipe, but it's actually quite quick. And that's another way to reduce that, what we call almost end range bending or flexion of the thumb, which you see in the top photo where the fingers really bent quite a bit. The tissue can get tired in that position. And then the last thing is just using voice activation. It's so easy to ask for help on your phone, ask Siri, or you can dictate your text messages, your emails, and it's quite accurate if you take your time and speak slowly. So using an earpiece helps you to keep your positioning as well. So just kind of have a look at how you're using your device and see if there's a way for you to be a little more neutral postured when you're doing that. So what are some alternatives? It's okay, as I said earlier, to take a break and switch up your positioning into something that's maybe a little less ergonomic or ideal. So you see on the left, sitting on the couch, on the floor of the couch, sitting on the couch. I don't know, I'm a little old to lay on my stomach, but maybe your kids will still do that. So how do we make some adaptations? Now you'll see on the right hand side, this is that, you know, working at a island. A lot of people have islands, and they can be quite a good height. You may have to raise your keyboard as well as your monitor, but it's not that hard to do. A banker's box is pretty good for doing that. So have a look and see if there's a way for you to kind of create that, so you can have a break perhaps from sitting. If it's not optimal, the breaks are more important. So people in surveys and studies tend to say that sitting is still the most comfortable position. However, there's been a lot of information about standing and how it's good for you. Sometimes people think it uses more calories. In actual fact, less than 100 calories a day more when you're standing, probably more like 50 or 60. So, but you do get some blood pooling, can affect varicose veins. So we really recommend short periods of standing, mixing it with sitting and standing. Walking's fantastic. If you're not a big walker, it doesn't always have to be big distance. I'm going to talk about some of the studies in a minute on that. But basically, walking is what we need to improve our metabolic blood health, to keep things moving in our system that we need moving. And it does relieve discomfort, according to the studies. I'm concerned, I think, a little bit at a physio level that this sedentary lifestyle issue that we all experience a little bit is going to be worse when we're working from home, especially if we're in the house with our kids. So just keeping in mind that we may have to focus a little bit more on how do we get that exercise, and as my son said, prevent the COVID-19 pounds. You know, like the university first year pounds. Anyway, we don't want to gain any weight. We want to stay fit, and we want to be comfortable. Okay, so if you have an adjustable chair, we're just moving along here. We've got a few more slides to go. The things you want to look at is the seat height. You want to adjust it so your forearms are in line with the keyboard that you're going to use. If you were in an office, we might say, or you have a table that's adjustable, we might say, put your feet on the floor first, lower so your thighs are parallel to the floor, and then, you know, you can adjust your table height. But that's not the norm for most people. So I would say make sure your arms are in the best position so your shoulders and neck don't get sore. You want your hips well back in the chair, and you want to make sure if there's a backrest that can be supported to increase the support for your low back, you want to do that. If not, add a lumbar roll, rolled up towel. You can see a couple of examples in the bottom of the slide at the right. There's lots of things out there. Obus form makes a small one as well. Armrests, if they're able to be adjusted to the right height so your shoulders are relaxed, you can use them. If they come forward too far and prevent you from getting close to the surface your keyboard is on, you may want to lower them and put them out of the way or take them off, because they can stop you from getting close enough. If the seat is too deep and you're getting pressure on your thighs and you can't really get good back support, tuck a pillow behind to take up some of that depth and give you the support. Okay. If you're considering changing your workspace, and you have been for a long time, and you want to change my voice, but you can do it yourself in settings. If you're considering getting a new table, one of the things that you can do is look at a height adjustable table. There's lots of them out there. The cost has really come down. They're in the range of $600 to $1,000 now, as opposed to $2,500 a number of years ago. Should you have a height adjustable table, I would really recommend you try to get a range of 23 to 48, because you want it to be suitable to whoever's going to use it. A lot of people, 50% of people need a keyboard height lower than 25 inches, so just keep that in mind. Minimum of 40 inches by 30 will allow you to use your keyboard. If more people are going to use it, or you have a lot of paper, you might want it a bit bigger. Lots of places to buy them, and obviously you can contact us if you need some more advice. Equipment, just some pictures of some of the types of equipment that are out there. There's a vertical mouse you see in the top left. There's a ball where you can see that you could move the scroll. There's a roller mouse option in the center there that goes with the keyboard. There's some laptop stands, footrests. We have put together a handout that talks about just a few different pieces of equipment that might be easy to access and not that expensive at home, and that's available. Should you want that, you can let us know. Okay, survey question, last one. How many people are regularly doing structured exercise or walking daily? Okay, this time for the truth. And so we can talk a little bit about those aspects as well. Okay, it looks like 15% not doing any exercise, 63% once a day, and 22% more than once a day. That's fantastic. You guys are doing great. That's a key to success, especially when you're in a non-neutral positioning at home. Makes a big difference. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about exercise and about cognitive ergonomics. So a lot of what we talked about today is physical ergonomics. It's your positioning and how to get into neutral and why it's important to move. Cognitive is also a piece of ergonomics in that it affects our comfort and our ability to work. So if you can, choose a space to work where you can leave your tools and come back in the morning. It improves efficiency, no time to set up. And so that's great if it can be done. Consider how to reduce ambient noise for parts of the day. Maybe a headset, people sometimes use white noise. I mean, when you're at home, obviously you're listening for your children, but there definitely are studies that show that noise surrounding you can reduce your concentration and efficiency. So if I guess this is where we talk about if you had a really important job to do, that you might want to do it when there's not a lot of noise, or you're not going to have as many interruptions, because we've been shown to be less efficient as well. You can see under interruptions, they did a study with university students who were distracted during the lecture, and they were up to 17% less learning going on, and because they tested them afterwards. So it can be visual distraction, or it can be audio distraction. So if you can somehow create a small space or a bit of time in parts of your day where you can reduce the noise, maybe it's after you've been for a walk or exercise with your family. Maybe it's when your kids are watching your favorite TV program. Concentrate on the jobs that really require your full concentration so you can do good work. So just being aware that that's a factor, and because we sometimes don't. Things like walking, we tend to recommend that you get up and move every 30 to 60 minutes, and at home probably every 30, just for a short period to get some stretching and movement. Trying to bookend your day, get dressed for work in the morning, end your day with a walk or exercise. Now, there are people who are dedicated pajama workers, and I know that. And so I'm not saying that that's right. There's been discussion in the paper about it. So I think try it each way and see what works for you to help you to be as efficient as you can at home. The last thing here is that loud noises have been shown to be a really high irritant for people working. So sometimes kids can be loud, sometimes there's other music going on. So just being aware that that can distract you from what you need to do. Okay, short walks. This study was briefly looking at the ability to reduce pain by walking. So it was a data entry, computer work. They were able to record how much work people completed and how well they did it in terms of accuracy and productivity. So what the outcome was that a 5-minute walk, brisk walk, once an hour, improved productivity and accuracy, reduced eye strain, and decreased discomfort in the neck and the shoulder. So it's a great opportunity when you're at home to do a short walk, whether in the house or out of the house. But I guess the message is keep your distance, 2 meters. Okay, this is an exercise strip that's on our website, and you're welcome to go to this link and do the download and to print that up and put it by your workspace as a reminder, just to get up. And these are some stretches that people find really helpful. I really do recommend you do a couple of stretches every 30 minutes and keep it nearby as a cue to move. This slide I put in, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but there were some nice studies that show that resisted exercise of the arms, elevating your arm with elastic bands or tubings, up to 2 minutes, repeating the movement up to 2 minutes or until the muscle is tired, but using really good posture, actually relaxes those 2 really important muscles in the back of the neck that I talked about. And when they relax, the blood flows in. So people really experienced a reduction in neck pain when they did some resisted exercise once or twice a day. So just to say that might be a great thing you could do mid-morning, mid-afternoon, could be straight ahead in front of you, could be out to the side. A lot of people have elastic bands at home, so it's a quick and easy thing to do. Some good research behind that. Okay, so who's happy about WFH? Well, the dogs are happy. The cats are happy. We know that. The kids are happy, I think. And I think, you know, sometimes the parents are happy. It is definitely a big juggling act, lots on your plate. So the structure that you're going to create, some of this knowledge to try to see if you can, when you're working, be in a good posture, take the breaks, do the short stuff to keep people sort of happy, going to help you with your work day. Okay, takeaway, neutral posture reduces muscle fatigue and pain, and it's shown in the literature, and I'm a big believer, and I think you'll find it's true. Change of posture is really good. So get up, stretch, all that kind of thing, but movement is better. Movement is important for your metabolic health, keeps all those things moving in your blood like we need for, you know, glucose carriers, all that kind of stuff. So movement, walking is important. Brief walking breaks, which we just talked about, increases circulation, reduces pain, and improves metabolic rate health. What's not to like? That's a good one. And exercise like yoga, meditation, resisted exercise programs can reduce discomfort and stress, anxiety. This is a tough time for everyone. Anxiety increases muscle tension. That can add to the discomfort you're feeling. So really important to try to use different kinds of exercise. And you've got to pick what you like and what works for you. There's lots of yoga programs that are offering free login for the next couple of months. Good Life has sent out a password if you're a member to do all the classes. Body Pump's good, Body Flow's good. So think about what you like to do, what you could do, maybe get your kids doing it with you because they love that. And that can make a big difference. And cognitive function is actually really important. You know, noises are distractions, anxiety is a distraction, causes tension, increases pain. All the demands of you being in the house can be tough. So getting out the door is great. And I just encourage you to remember that that's a key part too. It isn't just physical ergonomics, it's also cognition and how we deal with those interruptions. So there's a message. Let's get moving. Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm sorry if we've gone over a little bit, and I appreciate you hanging around. If you have any questions, Keith is going to help us out with those.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Yes, in everyone's dialog box, there should be a spot to be able to submit questions. Also in that control panel, you should also be able to find a spot where you can download a copy of today's presentation if you would like to, and we'll just give everybody a moment or two to submit those questions. And while I think of it, Wendy, I think next time you'll have to throw in one more poll question about how many people are working in pajamas versus those that are not.
I already know. I think it's a majority are in their pajamas.
Okay, a couple of questions. I'm looking for an office chair for home. What features should I be looking for? Is the first question that's come in.
Okay, so one of the key things I think is, I mean, obviously you need to think about price range, and that's going to help guide you. The one thing that's really important in a chair is that if you've got shorter legs, the seat needs to be shorter or be on a slider that allows it to get short enough. So when you sit in the chair, put your hips all the way back in the chair, and then look and see that you have room for 1 or 2 fingers to slide between your calf and the seat pan. If you cannot do that, the seat is too deep and you'll never be comfortable because you'll never get the back contact. So that's really critical. You need to look at the seat height as well. Will it go up to the height you need for the table you have at home? Or if it's an old table, maybe you consider cutting the legs down a little bit to get it to the height you want where your feet are on the floor. I like the idea that I can have a little bit of lumbar support. So I would look how well when you wiggle your hips back, how well the back fits into your lumbar curve. Can you adjust that a little to get good support so you feel comfortable? So those are the key things. Armrests are difficult sometimes because they're not always as adjustable as we need them. So I worry about the other things with the idea that I could remove the armrests if I didn't need them. Yeah.
Okay, and in a related question that's just come in, I have a ergo chair for the office, from the office, I guess. If I brought it home from the office, would I need to readjust it? So there's somebody who brought their chair from their regular office to their new home office.
Right. Okay. So in actual fact, for most things, no, probably. The one thing I would say is that I would check the surface you're working on at home, and then you need to have a look and to see whether or not the chair will go high enough to allow your elbows to be on that surface properly. So I guess, how do you measure that? You sit on a chair, something at home that gets you to the right height, and measure underneath your elbow. When your elbow is bent at 90 degrees and your shoulders relax, you measure that distance to the floor, elbow to the floor, when you're able to access the surface at home at the right height. And then you check that in the office chair, and if it can get you to the right height, it might do a good job for you. And just watching that the armrests don't keep you too far back. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of people have asked just about the presentation. In your control panel, you should be able to download a copy, but if you have any difficulty, just hit reply to the confirmation email, and we'll make sure we get a copy of the presentation to you once we're done with today's broadcast. Next question: can you recommend a laptop stand and separate keyboard? Wendy, you mentioned that you have some information on that people can access. How do they get that?
Yes. I guess I'm not sure the best way to send that out, Keith. So maybe I don't want to send it to people if they don't want it. So perhaps you could email injury through our website. You can email us through our website at injurypreventionplus.com and just say you're requesting the handout on the assistive devices to set up their home office, and we can flip that to you very quickly. The height, I would check the range of we put 2 or 3 laptop risers in this document. Now, I would check the range based on what you think you need with your laptop to get to eye level. And one of the keyboards that I like is an Evoluent Compact Essential, and it's only 12 inches wide. It's nice and flat, easy to use. So that type of thing I think is most people find pretty good. But we can definitely get you the document.
Okay, thank you. I'm experiencing some significant discomfort at my workstation. Do you offer options for virtual home assessments? If so, how do I go about pursuing this? Okay,
so yes, we do. We've done a number over the past. Often in the past, we didn't need to do them because people were at home very much, but we have done some at home, but we did them in regional offices with a company in places like Nairobi. So yes, we've done them in the past, and we're all ramped up to do some more now. So we're happy to connect with you. How it would work is that we would send you a questionnaire, get you to take some pictures of your space, of your working, and answer the questions. And then we would Skype or use another video program to have a look and talk with you, and then we'll send you a report with some recommendations. So you can again send us a request to our website, injurypreventionplus.com. There's a place to request us to contact you and tell us what you want. So yeah, happy to do that, and we've got 3 or 4 consultants who can do that. So yeah.
Okay, and why don't we take one more question? What would you recommend for arm support if my home chair doesn't have armrests?
Yeah, so I think the next best thing is to get yourself in nice and close to the surface you're working on, and then move your keyboard ahead a little bit so that you can use the surface for your arms to rest. And as long as you're at the right height, resting your part of your forearm right on the desk surface, and you're keeping contact with the chair back. So you're not leaning forward to do it. You're going to pull yourself in nice and close so your tummy's almost touching the desk, and then your arms can rest on the desk as you work. So that's a great option too.
Okay, and why don't I throw out the last question, Wendy, of all the many different things you covered today, from exercise and ambient noise to head positioning and neutral postures, what is there one thing that you recommend everyone start with? This is the most important thing.
Okay, I want you to do it all. So I know I'm teasing. I would say neutral posture is a really big deal. And then the next piece is you've got to get up and move every 30 minutes. So those 2 things are going to make you feel great. So
okay, well, we've been going for 50, so I think we'll say thank you to everyone for tuning in, and give everybody a chance to get up and go for that 5-minute brisk walk.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone, and a good weekend.
Are we done there, Keith?
Open the wine.
Yeah, I'm having trouble closing.
Okay.
Okay, so just I'll put you on mute.